Hello, everybody. This is our last planned session for the Public Health Applications course. And all we were hoping to do was to come back to the topic of kind of public health and biodiversity and how do these two things go together. And I was thinking about what to do with this topic last night and this morning, and basically just want to throw out maybe two case studies or examples of how biodiversity and public health link up or not. So I wanted to start, I'm going to share a page with you. I wanted to start with several examples of how the biodiversity community responded to the emergence of H5N1 avian influenza. So this was a pretty spectacular happening, which is to say H5N1 in the late 1990s emerged in Southeast Asia. It was a very interesting avian influenza strain in that it caused widespread mortality amongst wild birds, and as a consequence, it was tracked across Southeast Asia. It also had very serious human health impacts, and as a consequence, had significant monitoring as well. It then jumped in rapid succession to Europe and Africa. This was pretty spectacular in terms of disease emergence. And I just want to give you some examples of how my world, the biodiversity community, reacted to this. So here is a critical review of the recent expansion of highway pathogenic avian influenza H5N1. And just so you can see the conclusions, wild birds are a key element of the viral ecology of avian influenza, blah, 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 blah. But we conclude that while wild birds undoubtedly contribute to local spread of the virus, human commercial activities, particularly those associated with poultry, are the major factors that have determined its global dispersal. I'll give you another example. I think I need to share this again. Yes. Hold on one second. So here's another example. The spread of avian influenza, also coming from the biodiversity world. And this one doesn't have an abstract, so I'll just go down towards the end. High pathogenic avian influenza H5N1 is a poultry disease. The number of wild birds that have become infected is very small, suggesting that the poultry to wild bird and wild to wild bird transmission is inefficient. The main migration seasons between high and low latitudes have not proven to be high-risk periods for spread. He even goes so far as to say the press, with their reduced opportunities for spreading alarm at the presence of wild birds and their migration routes all over the globe, will suffer, but that's a small price to pay. So I've just given you two examples of what I would call denial of reality in the biodiversity community. This was biodiversity playing a role in disease transmission, which we know it does. These are zoonotic diseases. And the people who study biodiversity closing their eyes and sticking their heads in the sand and denying reality. So finally, we get to a study that actually was based on data and analysis and not on speculation and belief. And we see this paper, I believe it's this one. Hold on one second. Nope, not that one. Sorry, hold on. This paper. And this was a very interesting analysis predicting the global spread of H5N1 avian influenza. And what do we see? Again, I'll read a little bit of the abstract to you. Spread of H5N1 into Asia, Europe, and Africa has had enormous impacts on the poultry industry and presents an important threat to human health. We integrated data on phylogenetic relationships of virus isolates, migratory movements, and trade in poultry and wild birds. So this takes into account both of the factors that those previous two studies were based on. We show that 9 of 21 H5N1 introductions into countries in Asia were mostly through poultry, most likely through poultry, and 3 of 21 via migratory birds. In contrast, spread to most countries in Europe was most likely through migratory birds. Spread in Africa was likely partly by poultry and partly, partly by migratory birds. So what I'm after is, it's very easy to put one's beliefs or one's politics before one's science. And what happened in the face of H5N1 was elements of the biodiversity community being afraid that people would say, oh, this is a threat to human health, let's kill all migratory birds, or let's get rid of that beautiful wetland where migratory birds concentrate. And yeah, I can understand that, which is to say I can understand that they might be concerned, but denying reality is not a helpful avenue to dealing with that. Another example, and this is about a mammal. Let me navigate to it. There we go. So here is a very interesting, not just single study, but a whole now sequence of studies by Rick Ostfeld and Felicia Kiesing. But essentially this particular paper named, titled Biodiversity's Risk, the Case of Lyme Disease. And this is a very interesting one. Utilitarian arguments concerning the value of biodiversity often include the benefits of animals, plants, and microbes as sources of medicines and as laboratory models of disease. The concept that species diversity per se may influence risk of exposure to disease has not been developed, however. So essentially, they propose and provide evidence for a very interesting idea. High species diversity therefore is expected to result in lower prevalence of infection in ticks, and consequently in lower risk of human exposure to Lyme disease. And so essentially the idea is that biodiversity-rich areas have lower transmission rates because there are more elements of biodiversity, in this case mammals, to essentially sequester the pathogens and keep the pathogens away from humans. And this idea has been translated into aspects of many different disease systems and many different situations. I'll show you just some of the the evidence that they marshaled. The panel A here is Lyme cases per 100,000 on the vertical axis, and species richness of ground-dwelling birds. And you see there's a positive relationship. But looking at species richness of small mammals, you see quite a strong negative relationship. And so they've dealt with this situation not just on an empirical level, but also in terms of theoretical expectations. And essentially what it comes down to is that under some circumstances, elevated biodiversity can, in fact, augment disease transmission. And in other cases, biological diversity can damp out disease transmission. So, as in everything in science, it's complicated. But the point of showing you these is just to get us back to our original point, which is that these two things are related to one another. So biodiversity and disease are different views of the same set of phenomena, which are simply that the biological world is enormous and complex and interrelated. Any thoughts from the rest of the now 4 people? Abdallah had to leave for a meeting. 4 people around the table. Any thoughts? I'm not seeing any questions from our participants either. Thank you, Andrew, for saving the day as far as some questions. Well, maybe let's wrap up with that. One thing I will say is I would very much appreciate feedback from each of the people who has taken advantage of this course. You know, what worked and what didn't. This format is an experiment, and you've seen we've made a few mistakes with the technology and had a few confusions and things like that. The same thing happens when we do in-person courses as well. We'll lose the audio on a digital video or two. But my question is, what worked and what didn't? Or in comparing to other things you've done, other courses you've taken, what might work? We still have 3 in-person courses coming up. Just to go over those again, there's a course coming up in Benin in January on National Biodiversity Diagnoses. The participants are already selected for that. But then we have a course on biodiversity inventories in Cameroon in March, and a course on conservation implementation, which will be held we hope in Ethiopia later in the year, 2015. We will be announcing the opportunities for application for those courses soon. Watch the Facebook page especially, and watch the Biodiversity Informatics training page. But there may be other topics that we would like to do using this forum. We have modules being developed on biostatistics, on GIS using QGIS, and on R for statistical analysis. I would be very interested in your thoughts about what works. For example, should we have had exercises? That certainly increases the preparation cost for us, cost in terms of time and energy. But would exercises help? Should we be trying to get some of you online for in-person discussions with us, et cetera, et cetera? Luis?
Yes, in that context, I would like to say hi to the people in the University of Antioquia in Colombia, because they are following this course as part of the formal courses in the university. So maybe they have some feedback for us, because they have been with us since the beginning.
Yeah, that would be great. Either right now, if they can write a 30-second email, or we'd very much appreciate the feedback on the Google Plus page or in an email to biodivtraining@gmail.com. But we do need the feedback, and that's on several levels. You know, are there other topics that we should design courses for? In fact, several of the courses that I just mentioned to you have suggestions from previous participants. So are there other major topics that might be worth a week of work? Are there different formats or forums or platforms? Are there ways that we could tweak this same forum and make it work better for you? So again, any feedback is very welcome. And last point, before we say goodbye, I will remind you of this resource. Let's see. It'll come up in just a second. This is biodiversity-informatics-training.org. You can see along the left side of this page, you can see all of the courses that we have carried out so far. And very soon, Kate will add one on public health applications of biodiversity informatics. You can also see our webinar series, of which you all heard one element. The next one will be the last Thursday in October, and I'll announce that one quite soon. You can see upcoming training courses, and you can see a whole page of software and data resources. Sorry, the upcoming courses are down here on the lower left. So take advantage of this platform. It's essentially what we are using as the information center for this whole project. The idea is that within approximately a year, we will have higher first overview of the entire field of biodiversity informatics. Of course, if you offer us good ideas and good thinking about additional topics, we'll see what we can do about putting them together. Might be in person, although that set of funds is limited and may be enough only for these next 3 courses, or it might be using this forum. So help us out with thinking about this. I'd like to give a big thank you to, well, Yoshi and Dave in Arizona, and Abdullah and Luis and Lindsay and Kate, but essentially everybody who's contributed to this course. This has been basically an intense week, and I'd like to give a big thank you for those of you who have participated. Just a casual mention, but the viewership of the videos from this course, we've been able to see 3 days so far, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. The viewership has been over 2,000 minutes per day, which is approximately 2 person days of viewing per day of this course. So it's a real pleasure to see people taking advantage of this. So stay in touch, give us your best ideas, your best thinking, and your best suggestions, and thank you again to everybody for participating. So, take care. Bye-bye.